We'll get this meeting started at 5:01. Okay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please bow your head for a moment of silence. Thank you. Maybe soon. Okay. We have the invitation to address the Board of Trustees on agendized and non-agendized items. Do we have any takers? No cards today? Okay. Okay, information items, Building and Grounds, Facilities Master Plan, and Financing Report.
Well, good evening. We'll keep this as short or have as much information as any of the board members would like. While Sarah's getting that up, I think I know the slides in my sleep. Not that one. Not that one. In email. So as we talked about last time, Measure T authorized $153 million in bond expenditures. You meaning the board, committed roughly half of that for Menifee area projects and the other half for the Paris area projects. That commitment still remains true. Fred and Hector are going to join me up here in just a second. There it is. I went through that so quickly. It's now your part. There we go. Okay, next slide. Oh, I have a clicker. Okay. And I did skip the project list that we talked about last time. As a reminder, the project list included about $450 million in project. But again, as was stated clearly in the project list, as well as in all of our community meetings that we had, that included eligibility growth, a state funding program, and other local and leveraged money to get us to be able to spend that full amount of $450 million. The planning for both the new middle school and the high school are proceeding aggressively forward, and our primary focus this evening is upon the Paris High School project and the new middle school, because again, this doesn't affect Menifee at all. So Hector's going to take it, and then Fred. Hector?
Yeah, for my portion, I thought it was important to show a kind of a breakdown to show the Phase 2 portion of the campus along with PACE. So you can see it is the heart of the campus. Due to the lack of state funding, we've had to break down the Phase 2 portion of the project into two parts, of Phase 2A and a 2B. The 2A being the two-story classroom buildings, the boys and girls locker room, kind of delineated there, kind of towards the northern center of the campus. The 2B portion of the campus, which we had to put off to a later date due to the lack of state funding, is the career tech portion of the project, the student union, and the new kitchen. And also included in this image is the PACE agricultural building, two-story classroom building is also included in this portion of the project.
So the areas he has blocked off by the large and the small square had to be put on hold.
So I want to remind the board, again, of the $153 million that is authorized, that's going to be issued in what are called series. We've issued the first series. So tonight we're really talking about a second series. And what has happened, as we mentioned a little bit a couple of weeks ago, because assessed valuation throughout the district has risen greater than we anticipated, we have this opportunity to come before you with a second series of bond sale earlier than we had anticipated. This really has nothing to do with Menifee versus the rest of the district. The money we're talking about tonight is the Paris portion, if you will, and only that. So it doesn't really affect any Menifee planning. High school planning is going ahead full steam. That's our commitment to the Menifee community. Really, the crux of the issue.
Dr. Good, I have a question for you. When you guys say a commitment, sometimes people get confused. It wasn't it was a board commitment, but it was also in the bond language that the money raised in the Menifee Union School District, part of the district, that would stay there, and then the revenue generated from outside that area would be used in the rest of the district. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And one other spin on that is we always felt that if you were a Menifee taxpayer, let's say, that you were paying for improvements that were going to occur in Menifee. If you're a Paris, Romoland, Lakeview, Nuevo, generally you're going to be paying for expenditures, in those areas. So,
and that's how we sold the bond, and so it really doesn't matter who sits at the table here or who's superintendent or who's assistant superintendent of business, that would remain in force in perpetuity.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. The issue, what is happening, Candace mentioned this, briefly, is that when we had the Measure T information sessions, the campaigning, it was always very clear that the Measure T bond was meant to generate money for our local matching share requirement to get the state's matching share requirement or other outside funding opportunities. And I'm going to show you in a little while, it's disconcerting to me because I've been doing this a long time, but for the first time in over 30 years, the state program has dried up. I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'll describe that, in a minute. But I think it's important for the board to understand, even though this is not an action item tonight, we need direction on one of two options that we're going to present to you. And the reason for that is the Paris 2A project that Hector identified in the previous slide. We ran out of money in September because we're waiting on state funding that were owed for other projects. No guarantee. I think there's a guarantee it's going to come. We just don't know, exactly when that is. So, anyway, so tonight it's fairly simple. I mean, there's really two options that we would like direction on. One is, should we issue $10 million in Series B bonds, and that would allow us to finish Phase 2A, or do we issue $40 million in bonds, and that would allow us to finish everything that Hector showed on the second phase of Paris High School?
I don't know if that's helpful to see, again. So, in essence, what Fred is saying, if it's inside of the larger, help me out, math teachers, that's still a rectangle? Okay, thank you, Grant. No, I got two nods of the head from math teachers out there. Would be eliminated with option A, or with option B would be included. That would be agriculture. Correct.
Yes.
With option B, agriculture would be included.
Yes. It's okay.
One of those phases for Paris High School, there are three left, 2A, 2B in phase?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
There's actually 5, but phase 2, we had to divide into 2A, 2B, and PACE, again, because of funding and cash flow and, kind of everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
And then in the grand master plan for Paris High School, there's a Phase 3, which would be a new administration building, basically a new front, on Nuevo Road. Phase 4 would be a new Performing Arts Center, very exciting. Phase 5 would be some additional physical education athletic facilities.
Do we know how much is going to be invested in phase 2A, 2B, phase 3, 4, and 5? We know the cost estimates for all of the elements in 2. We don't have enough definition yet for the admin facility or for the Performing Arts Center to really answer that definitively, but it's beyond the scope of Measure T, in all honesty.
And besides it being beyond the scope of Measure T, Phase 3 and Phase 4 has not been designed other than, it's a series of rectangles on the master plan. But even if it was in DSA and we had, say, a construction manager give a cost estimate, those would be in today's dollars. And so it would be really hard to estimate what those might be because we don't know the timing yet.
All right.
So, but that's a great question.
I apologize in advance for my question, but I'm just trying to understand it because I was not
I know.
Right.
But I'm just using my own thinking. And I said, so how did we plan and even talk to the voters, hey, give us this money so we can sell these bonds and things like that? If you don't even know what we wanted to accomplish and how much that was going to cost.
Well,
That we did
What
the
would be
master
the
plan.
rationale for that?
yeah, we have, and I left it
That
in my,
could be a question to me from one of the stakeholders.
right.
And the reason that I'm asking you this is because last meeting, we had one of the community members asking, we were told that the middle school was going to be built first, not the high school. Now we are seeing that the high school is being built first. But now then, we learned that we are going to tell the community members, we are not even building a middle school because we don't have money.
I think the key word is yet.
Yet.
So now, I just don't want to be in that situation because you are asking for direction, right? And in order to consider what direction we want to go, we would like to see where is what we want to accomplish, how much, and all that. That is the rationale for asking.
Well, and the good news is Candace is looking at the master plan here. I never professed to be, a cost estimator expert. However, what is interesting is as we have proceeded through the master plan,
We found out he's pretty darn good.
it's been pretty close. So to answer your question, Dr. Arauz, that phases 3, 4, and 5 at Paris High School, we have a gross understanding of what the cost would be. But what is so exciting and why I'm so bullish about doing 2A, 2B, and PACE all together is we have put an incredible amount of time into planning, refining what is in 2A, 2B, and PACE that we didn't have when we did the master plan. So it's really, so my point is the phase 3, phase 4, phase 5, we want to take advantage of then current planning as well to refine the plans, and that will be modify the cost.
So summarizing, at some point, we are going to get for phase 3 is going to be this amount, for phase 4 and for phase 5, and we can make a decision for Series C and Series D so we can sell the bonds.
No,
Not
that
this bond measure.
yeah, that's not correct. That's not. So let me make sure.
Future financing.
Yeah, let me make sure we understand that. So, Series A and Series B. Series A predominantly has been spent on Paris projects, but it's funded the planning for High School 4, which has really been important. We're asking that Series B, which again, we're recommending that it be mostly Paris expenditures, that would do it for Paris, predominantly. Phases C and D would need to be reserved for the Menifee area.
Well, because you are saying that, just clarifying, we're talking about Series A, 35 million, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that was yeah, Series A is about 35 million. So, and that was spent on the Menifee? No, on Paris. Primarily Paris. Okay, with Series B, that is going to be the other 40. We are going to complete the 75.
Correct.
So the C and D is the rest of the 150 then.
And that would need to be dedicated.
Dedicated to the other
Menifee.
side. Yes, the Menifee.
Correct. Correct. And that's an important
Yeah,
point
because it's
when we start talking
153,
about
not
the middle
150.
school.
But basically the summary of the issue that we're facing is $150 million is not
Is not enough.
450 anymore.
Yeah.
We cannot do all of the projects in the project list, and so these two options for immediate discussion, which is the Paris area, are really an okay and a really good option, in our opinion, for the situation that we are left with.
And I guess my perspective and reminder is, Board, if we spend that money now on those Paris projects, we'll get more for our money because there's still a good bid climate out there to do it. If we wait and prices go up, we'll get less for what we're doing. So the choice you're making, I mean, of course, we wish we could have done $450 million worth of projects. And in 2012, that looked like it was going to be our reality. It's no longer our reality. We're back to a $153 million bond measure with half of it in Menifee and half for the rest of the school district. So the question you have to ask yourself is, if we do B, which is our recommendation, it means at this point, other than planning, we're not moving ahead on the middle school. We're moving ahead on planning because we never know what money will come from the state, and maybe somehow we'll be able to build that school. You certainly want to have your plans in Sacramento approved so that when money becomes available, you can move ahead.
And we do have some ideas for that are, further down the road.
You're not talking about taking money from Menifee's.
Absolutely not. No.
They say a picture's worth 1,000 words.
So, yeah, if I could talk just a little bit about this, Ariel, and in doing so, I think mostly about Dr. Newman, because he experienced what I'm going to talk about at Pinacati Middle School. And Dr. Rouse, you're a principal right now, so you will understand what I'm going to be saying.
I know
But
what you're talking about.
here is the challenge. I think the board needs to be reminded, Paris High School is 33.6 acres. So when you go in and you start doing modifications to the campus, Nick Hilton and his staff are impacted much more greatly than, Don Williamson would be at Paloma Valley with, 55 plus acres, or Julie would have been at Heritage High School with 63 acres. So the idea, and if you could look at this graphic, the buildings on the exterior were all of the two-story modulars that we've completed over the last couple of years. And we did so with the intent that those were less expensive to build so that the area in the center, which has now been demolished and ready for 2A, 2B, and PACE, which are the much more expensive facilities, that we would be at the end spending the same amount of money at all of your campuses. So less expensive on the perimeter with the core class, core academic classrooms, more expensive in the center where the goodies were coming. But something that is really important, I believe, at Paris High School is the interior of the campus badly needed to be reorganized, get rid of a whole bunch of single-story relocatable classrooms, go up with two-story, create an internal courtyard for socialization, for easier supervision. And the master plan does that. The completion of 2A, 2B, and PACE would really make a dramatic change, on that campus. So, why are we recommending the more expensive, $40 million route? I mean, I think there's several reasons. One is I just explained that we went cheap, if you will, on the perimeter of the campus, so that we could have a little more money in the budget to go into the interior and the more expensive, types of labs and science classrooms, auto shop, culinary arts academy, student union, those kinds of things. I think it's really important. I mean, there's a part of me that is so excited about what we've done with the ed specs in planning a new high school and a new middle school. But why would we not use that at Paris High School? And we have in the planning. So, I'd really like to be able to take advantage of that. Dr. Greenberg mentioned the construction market right now. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt that we'll be able to get more for our money if we build these projects now. All of our construction managers tell us the prices are going up. The idea of minimizing the amount of time that the Paris High School campus will be imposed upon by construction is lessened if we do all of this, concurrently. And
Less into what? How much?
it's going to be 2.5 years.
What do we do with kids and animals?
They're dealing with it. It's difficult.
Surviving
But,
right now.
so 2.5 years is the best case scenario. What we as a team hate to think of is if we go with option A, it's 2 years to 2A, and then the majority of that empty dirt space remains empty dirt space.
Right.
I don't know, John, the answer to that question. Is it 5 years, 10 years? I don't even want to say any other numbers.
And Mrs. Cooley, to soften that a little, the Paris High staff is incredible. I mean, they're making it work. Mm-hmm. But as far as a position of equity, I'm excited about what we've done at Heritage High School, but I'd love to do, the same thing, for the students, the 700 approximate students that participate at Paris.
Yeah, and while they've been wonderful, and while they're, certainly dealing with it, just like Charles and Drew would tell you, they have done at Pinacati, because they see the light at the end of the tunnel. It does impact the instructional programs. I mean, just talking about their bell schedule, they have to have longer passing periods. If they have a class in the 6,000 building at the front of the campus, and now they have band or ASB or ag, they now have to go to the interim housing way back on the side of the ag facility, and they can't make a direct path. They have to walk around around the rectangle, which I almost turned into a square. Or circle, I mean.
And we talked a little bit about this the other day, whether this is right or wrong. I mean, Murrieta built Vista Murrieta High School right on our border. That, to me, is a challenge. Valverde's doing the same thing now, just to our north. And we're going to be in a position of competing for students to keep at Paris High School. And I think the last thing, I'd like to say on this issue is really we're doing everything we can to benefit Menifee's potential unification. We're working hard on that. But it doesn't feel right to me to not do everything at Paris High School, because that will be one of your two remaining high schools. We should be doing everything to create equitable facilities, there as well.
And that's one of the criteria. Were you just going to say that for unification? Sorry.
I was going to say the same thing. And if you look at, Dr. Rouse remembers the enrollment at Pinacati was once up at 1,419 students, and its capacity is going to be 1,370 with the new construction. And right now enrollment's at 1,185 because we have CMI that's competing for students, along with Innovative Horizons up the street there on A Street as well. So in a sense, we give our kids a great, beautiful, best-looking middle school, one of the most highest functioning facilities in the county, and it would be a shame to not even build a quarter of a new middle school, if that's all we can build, and not understand that all those kids benefit because they all go to Paris High School. So spending money at Paris High School, again, it's not ideal. We wish there was a state bond program, and hopefully there will be in the future. But right now, we want to take advantage of the bid climate and do what's best in Paris.
You've almost got my thing done here, so. Right. So very quickly, I mean, to me, the question is, what about the middle school facilities? And, as Candace has said, the problem is either option you pick, there's not enough money to do the middle school without state funding. So, but something that's interesting is when I met with Charles the very first time in 2007, 2008, we always talked at Pinacati about there being 4 phases. And the 4th phase was to build a new middle school and to alleviate some of this enrollment and get it at a new campus. Dr. Greenberg is as some of you have mentioned, that has taken care of itself a little bit with students choosing to go to CMI, choosing to go to Innovative Horizons. And it's fairly interesting because, you mentioned the 14-19 enrollment, I think, Dr. Rouse, even when you were at Pinacati.
That was your last year.
Right. Okay, 1480. Now, the enrollment this year was approximately 1185. The reality is that what we have done at Pinacati is this is what, in your era, when you were there, this is kind of what it looked like. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean this disparagingly. You were housing students. But it was not, as Dr. Newman will tell you, an optimal environment to supervise kids, to create, a collaborative environment. It was housing students. So this is not the best aerial, but it still shows the exciting things that have happened on a smaller scale as to what we're proposing at Paris High School have happened at Pinacati. There now is a central courtyard where, for students before school, after school, at lunch, socialization. There's classroom buildings that are now coordinated where collaboration, can occur. And at the start of next school year, we're going to be at a point where we're going to have capability for an additional 200 students at that campus. So the need for the new middle school has lessened. It's the beauty of a master plan. It led us down a path, but, current information is telling us maybe we don't need it, just yet. So the question is, really with the middle school or the high school number 4, we need a state program. And
Fred, excuse me.
yes.
What's the expected enrollment this coming year?
At Pinacati?
Yeah, it's 1185, and then what's expected?
1235. I had 1217.
And what is the capacity
Capacity is
at this time?
13.7.
1370. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So not that that's a lot of comfort, but there's some growth room there, So to get back to the state program, I'm going to show you a slide in the next slide, I believe, that will show that for the first time in 30 plus years, we don't have state money. The governor is not a fan of bonds for public school facilities. He's kind of killed single-handedly a 2012 and a 2014 statewide ballot measure. There is momentum, however, to maybe accomplish this in a different way. The Building Industry Association, Coalition for Adequate School Housings are starting an initiative process that may get it on the ballot. So again, with the new middle school and the new high school, we have to get the plans into the state for all of the approvals and out. We are doing that because we need to be ready, if and when that state money arrives. This is very interesting, though. This goes back to 1982, and it shows you, other than in June of 1994, there has always been state money around. So I don't think it's, going anywhere. Thank goodness that, not thank goodness, but the recession came for 2008, 2012. So the billions of dollars that were approved in 2002, 4, and 6 went much longer. But it's gone now. So it's just the reality. So to me, a key thing is we need to have a plan for the middle school. What is it that we're going to do? So step number 1 is really we're going to continue obtaining the approvals that we need to be in line if and when a state program, comes along. I think we ought to be looking at, and again, I want to remind you, either option you take tonight does not raise the tax rate 1 cent for anybody. It does not. But I do think what we ought to be looking at somewhat gingerly is the idea of the reality is, I have other clients where their boards are already having passed a bond in 2012. They're looking at the next bond. If the state is going to dry up or become anemic, we can't just not address our needs. So there would be the potential for and I'm really estimating here, adding in the Paris area a small bond to use as our matching share, $6, $7 a year, something like that, probably to the $30 that's already been authorized. That might be a strategy.
Would any of this qualify us for hardship? We used to have that program.
There's no state program.
Okay.
There isn't. Then that's a very good question. But there is no hardship program, and in fact, Ed, what the state would say, they would look at Paris Union High School District and say, "You have all the money in the world. You passed a $153 million bond. Why do you need us?" Well, because we did what you said. We went out and told the voters that we were going to, if you will vote a tax on yourself, the state will be there for their half. Well, they're not there.
I have one more question.
Yes.
I completely understand the situation about the middle school. We have the increased capacity to 1380. We have 1145. So we have room for growth right there. However, what is the plan for the new high school? Even though it's in Menifee, if we issue the bonds for Series C and D, we are going to get only 75 million, and the cost is 123. What are we going to do to complete the
I would think we wouldn't issue those bonds until there was some kind of matching
Are we
funds,
going
because
to wait then?
Exactly.
would you want to build 3/4 of a high school with portables
That's what
everywhere?
I-
That doesn't sound like something I'd want to build at all.
Exactly.
That doesn't sound like something I'd want to send my kids to either. So
But those are decisions that we'll have to talk about
Later.
in-depth.
Okay.
I'll tell you, I'm envisioning, once we completed the 2009 master plan, we had lots of community committees. We had a bond feasibility committee. We had, all kinds of things like that. And I think we need to engage our stakeholders. One, so they understand the situation that we're in, looking for volunteers. And two, so that we can address, all of the different scenarios that are out there, because, we need to do the same analysis at the high school level. What capacity, at the highest capacity, maybe not ideal, can our 3 existing high schools absorb? And then, make that decision. Is it, if that's an enormous number or it causes undue stress on those schools, then is a better alternative to phase a new high school? Or do we think, have we done polling and we think a bond would pass, or the state has money, or whatever the situation is, then we can do the whole high school. And so, far be it for any of us to try to look into the crystal ball, because it's not been very helpful.
But Dr. Rouse, there is one thing that you did at your last board meeting that addresses what you're asking. And you approved a mitigation agreement, a very handsome mitigation agreement that goes solely towards high school number 4. So I suggest we continue looking under every rock, just like we did with that.
Fred, excuse me, whomever. So, okay. So, what kind of bonding capacity? What kind of bonding capacity we have? In the future, to finish phase 4 and phase 5, as well as fund the middle school. Because I don't see building a new middle school and not finishing the other 2 phases. Oh, is that 3 phases?
phase 3, 4, and 5.
Oh, three as well. Huh?
It's bad news, so I get to answer it. Let me make myself clear. We've done Series A, which predominantly has gone to Paris. We're proposing to do Series B, which would go to Paris High School, what we're recommending tonight. We would have no current.
No, I understand that. I'm talking about the new bond. Yeah, I understand that part.
It's an item for great debate, because it's totally what we did. We took a very conservative approach to how is assessed valuation going to grow. Mm-hmm. That hasn't happened. It's been much more robust.
Mm-hmm. I understand.
And if that's the case, then the answer is more. It's greater. And sooner.
Okay, but just give me a ballpark figure. I don't take the middle ground. It's not more, it's not less, but somewhere in the middle. So what kind of bonding capacity would that be? In other words, will we have enough to finish the 3 phases that are left at the high school as well as the middle school?
Uh-huh. I think it's at least what we had for Measure T. Now the thing that has happened in this area is that it has been very robust, and it goes down.
Yeah.
And there's cycles.
Yeah, so there's a middle ground. So what's the...
I think the $150 million that was approved in 2012 is not that far down the road.
Yeah, but we wouldn't need that amount, so we could play it safe and still build 3, 4, and 5 in the middle school.
Right.
Without going for 100...
for something lesser.
Yeah.
What we would do is, if we had these committees like I had proposed, well, not really proposed, but just mentioned before, we would do what Jose had said, and we would get a little bit more firm numbers on the projects that would be in the project list, because the last thing we want to do is say, well, we have capacity for 150, but let's only take out 100, and then get cost estimates, and oh no, we need 115. And so that would be part of that.
Well, that goes with... Yeah, I understand. That goes without saying. So somewhere... just because you have 150 out there, you don't want to go for the 150 either, because there's limits as to what the community will say. Again, because the elementary district passed a school bond not too long ago. They're building a school all entirely with their own funds, because the same thing we're facing.
Great point.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
this again? So, I think we've been very clear as to our recommendation, which is option B. We would like to bring bond documents to you, similar to what we did with the CFD and then the Series A from the previous bond measure. It was Series A, was it not?
Yes.
Thank you. To you in August, because Hector's out of money in September, so he's standing at my door every day. So that would be our recommendation for all of the reasons we have discussed to benefit the 2,600 plus students that will be going through Paris High School to fill in that dirt with quality programs, compete with Valverde, and so forth. And I think the last thing that I want to mention is just really letting you know the commitment on our part to work with the community. One, to explain the situation as it currently exists, but two, to involve them, just like we did with Measure T going forward. So with that, if there's any questions.
Whatever it takes to finish Paris High School in A+ condition and fast, I want to do that.
Okay.
Because look what they've had to live with. And I want that finished now, and I don't care about the middle school here and there. I want Paris High School done.
Okay.
So option B would be.
Yeah, and I care for both. So I care for what you care for, but as well, we got to look to the future. So the question I have is, how much does one question side? How much do they owe the state owe us at Pinacate?
It's over $4 million.
$4 million. Okay.
For phase 2.
For phase 2.
Yeah. Okay. And the other thing is, I don't have any problem. I mean, we got to do what we have to do. The issue that I'm, as I told you before, I'm very concerned about is we need to involve the stakeholders. Mm-hmm. So the stakeholders, so that it's going to get out there and it's going to be all twisted anyway, but let's do the best that we know to do. So like we went in, well, we're going to go out and say, okay, we're going to have to borrow more money. Basically, that's it in layman's term. And involve and have the community meetings that you have, and not just the ones that are on the sitting in the committee, but anyone that wants to come out there and pitch a fit or whatever, because they felt that maybe they were promised, and I know there was a whole slate, a menu of things, and it says, well, you can have all of these things. While as we have the money to buy them, but you can't have everything on the menu. But a lot of people don't understand that, and so
We could even have a board member on that committee.
yeah, you could. I nominate the president. All right.
Okay, board. I think we have consensus, and we'll bring. Obviously, nothing is approved tonight. It has to come back to you in August, and we'll do that. And I thank the team. You guys have done. Pinacate is just amazing. When we finally dedicate that school in August or September, when we're completely done and have all the furniture in, I'm just so proud of what we've been able to do there. And we can do the same at Paris High School. And again, I think
We'll try for 2, Joe.
yeah, we'll try to get that bid climate going and see how many subcontractors we can have on the campus at one time.
But that's an interesting point, and one of the next things we'll do, since we know we'll be bringing option B for board approval, is we need to work with the Paris High School staff, because there's really not a couple of options, though there are. And the first option is to do it as quickly as possible, but that means a little bit more heartache. But it's temporary, and we know the money's there to finish it. We need a larger construction staging area. So does that take over another athletic field? What do we do? So we need to figure out how to involve the staff in making those decisions. But as Fred said earlier, the staff is so great to work with there, and they certainly understand what we're trying to accomplish for them. So, okay. Thank you very much.
One more question. I'm sorry. When you bring it to us in August, if we approve it, how quickly can we issue those bonds?
We would be September.
September.
Because we need the money in September.
And I know we need the money as quickly as possible.
We will be on the fast track.
I was just wondering how quickly we.
If you drive by at
those would be
8
able to.
o'clock at night, you'll see.
You're going to see me with a can out in front of Paradise.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to LCAP now. Local Control Accountability Plan. This is our second year. Everybody in the state has to do it. And Marcy and her team at Ed Services have put in literally thousands of hours putting this together. And so before there's a public hearing, Governing Board, we think that the public should hear kind of the outlines, broad strokes of the plan. And so we've called Marcy the LCAP queen. Diane becomes the princess. Charles, does that make you a prince? I'm not really sure.
He's like a duke or something like that.
But I do want to mention that
Boy, that's what he is. The court jester, that's what it is.
I think our Ed Services teams look like they just walked out of a fashion magazine. They all look so great tonight.
I just want to say good evening. Sit back, enjoy your lifesavers. We're going to take you on a journey. I don't know how else to say it. But I just want all of you to know who are in this room at this time that this was a team effort. This was truly a team effort. Although we almost killed Miss Martin, I want you to know, because she is kind of like mom. She's like the one you go to camp with who says lights out at 10, and you keep trying her. But look how handsome they are. So can we give them a beautiful applause, a wonderful applause? I just have to say, I have such a handsome team. So we're all going to take a little bit of a different part. And I just, for clarification, because some of you who were on the board last year, if you remember, we presented, it was the design of the LCAP, the Local Control and Accountability Plan. And that plan was really designed for 3 years, with every year we do an annual update. So this year is our annual update. You know, I just feel this heaviness back here, this cloud. It's really a strange feeling, but it's okay, you guys. Okay. So what you'll hear today is we had to take all of the information that we presented last year in the LCAP, we'll refer to it as the LCAP, and transition it into our annual update. And with that, we did start with our mission and vision, which is Paris Union High School District will inspire and support the academic and personal success of every student every day. And our vision is to prepare all students to become productive and contributing members in a very it's almost an understatement when we say competitive global society. It is a fast-paced competitive global society. And kudos to all of the entire staff in Paris Union High School District who have truly stayed out as forerunners of what's happening in technology and learning, instruction, et cetera, et cetera. All of us applaud every single person who works in this district. So if you're in the audience, we applaud you. Okay. The LCAP, originally, when we designed it last year, there were certain components in the LCAP that we had to address. One being the stakeholder engagement. And last year, our stakeholder engagement was a little bit different than this year. We read kind of some of the comments and listened to the parents who participated. We had good turnout last year, but we wanted to bring it to a more personal, connected level this year. And I'll talk about that towards the end. We also had certain goals and progress indicators that had to be defined. And that isn't just all of us sitting in the room and saying, oh, this will be our goal. It was really doing a data analysis with great scrutiny, identifying the needs of the district, and being able to identify what needs to happen so we can begin to close the achievement gap, climate, school climate, district climate, et cetera, et cetera. Then we had to define actions and services, and then, of course, align our expenditures and any monies to those specific needs and what our expected outcomes are. This year, in the annual review, annual review is special ed, annual update, sorry about that, annual update has added some more components. So we look at everything that was in the original LCAP, and then this year, with the annual update, we had to define what were our planned actions and budgeted expenditures, what are the actual actions and services that we defined. So there's a lot of repetition, but it was a tough, I think this was the toughest we've ever had to do. Then we had to pay attention, the scope of service, what are our focus groups, and as you know, low income, students with disabilities, English learners, and foster youth they're mandated focus groups that we had to look at. Ed Services has been under the belief and also the focus that every student needs to be addressed in that LCAP, with heavy emphasis on looking at the performance of those 4 focus groups. And with that, then we had to define what do we expect to happen annually, and then what actually did happen, what were the actual annual outcomes. So you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is like repetitive. It was repetitive, but it's a great way to assess, because there are some things that we didn't implement, maybe because of time, maybe because it wasn't a priority. You can't do everything. I think that's the one message that came about in the design of the annual update and doing the review. So with that, I'm going to hand this off because every single person behind me has a part. Oh, except for this. Yeah. Okay, so here's the 4 goals that have been defined, and I'm not going to read these to you. I apologize.
She's short. You're short.
But these 4 goals will be addressed as each person presents their particular goal. And here is Grant Bennett, future assistant superintendent. You go.
Thank you, Marcy. Board of Trustees and Dr. Greenberg and Cabinet, we're happy to be able to share some of the things that we've been doing. Our first goal is helping the kids attain proficiency in all academic areas. So that was our overarching goal of what we wanted to do. And then we had 7 different things that we were looking at underneath that category, and develop a baseline for API, AYP. Well, the state and feds kind of froze AYP. They froze us at last year's number, and they're not giving us a new API. They're going to be changing that system. So Mr. Tippy is going to talk about that more, our assessment guy, in a few minutes when he comes up for goal 2. The proficiency baselines for CASP, which is SBAC. They changed the name of SBAC to CASP, so they keep changing acronyms on us. We had all of our 5th through 8th graders take the CASP test. CASP. I'm lisping now. CASP test this year in both ELA and math, taking 4 different tests: English test, English performance task, math test, math performance task. So we did that through all those grade levels, and we're pending and getting our scores back now, so we can start sending the baseline data for using that information. Another thing we want to do, we want to increase the number of kids in AVID, because we know AVID is such a great program that are going to help kids be the college ready that we're looking to do. And one of our goal was to raise it by 4% annually. And we actually, this first year, 19% more kids were in AVID than they were previously. So that's something to be proud of.
Going to a 7-period day, do you think that will help assist some kids to take AVID?
That'll give the kids more options for AVID, and give those AVID kids more chances to get those requirements in that they need, because AVID takes up one of their electives right now. So this is going to give them a chance to take that extra elective that they need. Maybe we won't have to offer a 0-period Spanish class because they can fit it in the regular school day. The other part of AVID that's important that we're looking at is the retention rate in AVID. We want to make sure once we get kids in there, they're successful in the class, they're enjoying the class, and they want to stay in the class, because that can be an issue if kids aren't doing well in there, because they can be moved out because of grades and not doing what they need to. We're working on implementing units of study in both ELA and math. ELA, we had units of study developed for grades 7 through 11, and 12th grade is doing expository reading and writing, so that's using the Cal State's curriculum, so we've done that. In math, we worked on units of study. We originally were working on the integrated math, which we've done a reevaluation of what we're doing, and we're converting back to the traditional algebra, geometry, algebra 2, after a lot of input from our teaching staff and what we're doing. So all the work we did isn't lost. It's just going to be shifted into the other areas because you're still teaching algebra and geometry and those things. So we're going to be making that shift as we go into next school year. Utilizing standards-aligned materials. Our English is using novels, primary and open source documents to teach the classes, and a lot of, even at middle school and the lower grades in high school, we're using expository units from the Cal State. They have grade level units there. The math, we piloted a new textbook in the second semester this year, and that ended up being one of the ways we looked at changing back, because they looked at the integrated textbook that was offered and didn't really think it was going to meet the needs of our kids. So that's when the determination was made to look back at the traditional, because there's a lot more materials available. And what we're doing into this school year is we're going to be examining all the different math materials available, using our teachers to do that, and using a rubric to look at to evaluate all the materials and look at piloting the following year a couple different textbooks so we can make a very educated decision. And then we want to having the counselors work on analyzing transcripts to make sure kids are being college and career ready, A through G, meeting A through G requirements. And we've done a lot with this year. We brought in a resource from Riverside County Office of Education to work with our counseling staff on transcript evaluation, on raising the A through G rate. And you're going to see in a few minutes the great strides we made in that category as far as the percentage. I don't want to steal Mr. Tippy's thunder. I know that's part of what he's going to talk about. Isn't that right, Charles? Okay. So we've done a lot along that area, and we're going to continue to do more. And I think the 7-period day is really going to help us with this part. Getting the counselors are going to be able to get kids into some intervention earlier than they would previously, and kids may be able to remediate some of the problems they've had in a class back in the regular classroom, rather than having to rely on A+ so much to try to make up credit. So we're excited about where we're at as far as attaining the proficiency. We know we have still a lot of work to do, because we're never going to be perfect. So we have to continue to move forward, and I think we're in a good place. And I'll turn it over now to Mr. Tippy. I'm Mr. Morris. I'm sorry.
I just want to share with you that in your 170-some-odd page document, there, if you're doing it online, if you're just kind of doing it electronically, we put in links for all the data. So if you have, as Grant was talking, it made me think he was referencing like Avid. It will show you, we went back a minimum of 3 years on all of our data. So they're on links. They're also in an appendix in the back, the data information for your reference, as well as acronyms. So you have current acronyms. Sorry, Brian.
It's okay. Good evening, President Nelson, Board, Dr. Graber, Cabinet. Just continuing on with where Mr. Bennett kind of left off, emphasizing 3 major points from this slide here. 3 things we want to share. The best way to address credit recovery in this district is to not let kids fail in the first place. So we're going to work with teachers this year on creating alternative assessments in their classrooms and find different ways to reach the kids before they can fail, address their learning styles. Common Core lends itself to a variety of ways to assess kids, and we're really going to work on that in our classes this year. Keeping with this as well, our kids who do fail courses, we've got an excellent array, again, of credit recovery, both during the school year online as well as during summer school. And to help kids get ahead a little bit, we're going to continue with acceleration courses as well. Avid, as Mr. Bennett said, we're an Avid district. We're doing great things with Avid. We're going to continue to do great things with Avid. Kids who are not in Avid, they're going to be trained by teachers who are strong in Avid instructional strategies, as well as paraeducators who are strong in instructional strategies in Avid. So we're staying with Avid. We're really excited about what we're going to do for English learners this next year. Our academic language development programs for English learners. Students will take what we call the CHELSA test, and they'll be placed in either ELD 50, 51, ELD 62, or ELD 98. Now, upon completion of ELD 98 with a B or higher, they'll be, when they go to MSJC, able to take MSJC's English 100 class as a freshman, which is true UC or Cal State freshman English. It's a class I used to teach for MSJC. If a student finishes English ELD 62 only, then they can still go into MSJC as a freshman after their senior year. However, they'll be one grade level below college freshman English. This is exciting. Emphasize something that we have on a later slide, but seniors who graduate these English learners can take the Summer Bridge program to prepare them for their first year as a freshman at MSJC. This is exciting what we're going to do with these English learners. Can't wait for the results. Goal 2. Dr. Gilbert.
Brian, before you go ahead, I want to just remind everybody that in this tentative agreement that you've yet to approve with our teachers, there's a 90-minute every Wednesday collaboration time, different from PLC. And so our expectation is these people and teacher leaders, we have a tremendous amount of teacher leaders out there who can help other teachers understand how best to use the Common Core to meet these goals. So our plan isn't to just say, here we go, guys, here are the benchmarks, you got to reach them, and if you don't reach them, we've got a problem. What sort of training, what sort of professional development, and you're going to see Ed Services out at the schools, especially on Wednesdays, working with our teaching staff and talking about looking at results and what are our plans to improve student achievement.
And to highlight goal number 2 has to do with getting students ready for college and careers. And these are the metrics that we have for that. The first one was establishing baselines in the Academic Performance Index and the Adequate Yearly Progress. So those are the state and federal accountability systems. And when it says establish baselines, these are really baselines. So the state system will be updated and released in fall of 2016. And one of the really good things about that is all of these things that we've identified in the LCAP are kind of mirroring what the state's doing as well. The AYP rates, a lot of schools and districts have not really paid much attention to that because no one really had a chance of making it. One of the things they're doing this year is at the high school level, they are eliminating the KC requirement and using the Smarter Balanced participation rates for this year. So I'm happy to report that pretty much all of our schools are at 99 or 98% participation, and the state and federal government requires 95%. So they'll be looking at participation rates for the Smarter Balance assessments and grad rates, and then at the middle school, attendance rates. So it looks like we have a really good shot at making that target, which is the first time that we've had it in a long time. So that'll be something exciting to look at, and I think we'll have some success there. The other two metrics that we had were increasing the graduation rates and decreasing the dropout rates. And both of those you can see in the report starting on page 28. Those have been pretty steady throughout the last 3 years. As Mr. Bennett did highlight, the A through G completion rate, that increased from 24% in the 11-12 school year to 32%. So some really good gains on that. And then similar trends with the AP enrollment and pass rates. The high school exit exam, those have been pretty flat for the last 3 years, but there's a new Senate bill out right now that will probably eliminate that. So that will be something that we won't be looking at in the LCAP in the future. And then with the high school juniors meeting the ELA requirements for the EAP program, steady gains in that over the last 3 years. And then once again, that will change with the Smarter Balance assessments in the future as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lynn or Brian.
Me. I'm hearing a common message here, Mr. Bennett. Okay. Again, staying with our theme that we want kids to pass classes the first time. This year, special education will be releasing special education teachers and their collaborating gen ed partners every 6 weeks to analyze student grades and look at kids that are failing classes, kids that are getting D's in classes, and why are they getting D's and F's. And we want to adjust IEPs, instructional delivery, and services mid-semester before those F's ever occur so these kids pass the classes the first time. We're going to try to adjust as we go and try to stem this tide of kids who aren't passing our classes. A to G, same mode. Our special education teachers are going to be analyzing A to G progress for their students in addition to their 4-year plans towards graduation. We're going to add that as a component to the IEP and see where are our kids at in not only graduating, but graduating A to G ready. Counselors are going to be working with all students to try to see how A to G ready we are, that we're not only going to reach graduation requirements, but we're going to try to increase the number of kids who are going to graduate from our schools A to G ready. Again, pending board approval, we will hire 3 new counselors in the fall that will assist with this effort of looking at student transcripts and monitoring student performance. And again, addressing the issue of attendance and encouraging more kids to be in school. Pending board approval, we will hire 2 attendance specialists to join us in the fall, again, to help sites track student attendance and encourage more kids to be in school. When they're in school, they're learning.
And I'd like to add, board, adding that 7th period is key. You know, the top students, I use my granddaughter as an example, who'll be a freshman at Paloma. She was having to choose between Spanish and drama. Top students will be able to take both those classes. The kids in the middle and the kids on the bottom, school's not exciting for them. It's not a real draw. You know Mrs. Twyman as a former counselor. Now they're going to be able to take ceramics and art and music and STEM classes. These are the classes that could really increase our attendance rate. And I think when you increase attendance, kids are in school more. There's all kinds of research that shows if they come to school more, they're going to do better in all the indices. And so we're really looking forward to seeing an increased elective program helping academics.
Next, we have Goal 3. All departments will provide a safe and positive learning environments for all students and staff. And so several metrics that we selected to kind of monitor our progress in this area. The first one was just increasing student participation rates in specific areas. Previously, we would focus on growth in a lot of different areas, but previously we have not necessarily identified how our kids participating in positive activities on our campuses. So we selected after-school programs and also sports. And so for the first year, we've identified baseline data that we have identified in our LCAP so that from here on out in subsequent years, we can continue to monitor our participation rates and work with our school sites to increase the number of kids that are participating in positive events on our campuses. The next one was just to reduce the incidence of bullying, drug use, violence, truancies, suspensions, expulsions by 10% on all campus. Currently, we don't have data, but in just a few months, we will have data. So we took the data that we currently have, and so as of now, we're kind of looking at a decrease in bullying, violence, and suspension on all campuses throughout the district. That's kind of what the trend is saying. Now, that's not official data. It could change by the end of the year. On the other hand, we identified an increase in terms of the truancy rate and also drug use suspensions. And so we're targeting that area next year in terms of action plans to begin to address those issues on our campuses. The next one is just maintaining facilities per Williams compliance. And so we've selected the Williams compliance. We have that data yearly that our M&O do a great job of going out and really analyzing how clean our sites are. And so we're using that data as kind of a benchmark yearly for sites to hit. And as of now, 95% of all our campuses, all of our campuses are passing with a 95% or better in terms of the cleanliness of the campus. The last part of that was just to decrease the middle and high school dropout rates as well as chronic absenteeism in middle and high school by 5% annually. So chronic absenteeism rate decreased during the previous year. We're waiting for those numbers to come out as of now, but we're not waiting for those numbers to come out. We're still planning to attack that number because that number, regardless, is too high. If it's 10 or 15%, there's still too many kids that are staying home and not coming to school. So we're ensuring that plans are in place, and Lynn Braxton will share a few of those in just a minute as she talks about actions and services. And the last one is just the dropout rate. We want to keep that target in front of us as well in terms of reducing that in our district. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Lynn Braxton, and she'll talk about action and services.
So with looking at our focus groups, we wanted to figure out how can we best support our students. So with our PBIS, the Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports for our student, we just finished our first wave of training with all the administrators that are over the PBIS at their school sites. Now each of our school campuses are at different stages of success, but some of our sites are a little bit more advanced, while others are still building their PBIS teams. Currently, we're looking at all the data that we've gathered and trying to determine where our strengths were and where our weaknesses are so that we know areas that we need to improve in. One of the things that we have recently started working on is our ERMS specialists, our educationally related mental health specialists, are teaming up with Dr. Newman and collaborating with him on how we can work together to improve the PBIS services in each of our school sites. In addition to the PBIS, we have also implemented restorative justice. And with this, we're trying to figure out ways to foster more positive results and responses from our students instead of always being punitive. With this, we work with the offender to learn to identify when they have committed a crime against someone else and teaching them to be able to take responsibility and to help restore whatever it is that they committed, the act that they committed against a person. This helps to also make our school campuses a lot stronger and helps to continue to build relationships when we look at teaching the teachers and students and our school campus staff how to resolve conflict in a positive way. It usually takes about 3 to 5 years to get to that level of peer success that we're aiming for. But as a result, we are seeing some reduction in our bullying, fighting, suspensions, and expulsions, which can help to create a safer school community, which leads us into the next section about our Safe and Drug-Free School campaign. Right now, we're looking at scheduling monthly events to include everyone in district-wide activities. And again, our ERMS therapists, we're using them in, they're holding groups with our students at each of the comprehensive campuses, talking about bullying, talking about self-control, and helping them to build their own skills, and then also linking our students to community resources. And with attendance, the chronic absenteeism, we're targeting our kids who are absent 10% or more of the school year. And for the 2013-14, our rate was 23%, and we definitely want to decrease that. We also have put together a task force, which currently involves 2 parents, assistant principals that are over discipline, and a deputy district attorney. We're also going to be recruiting community members so that this task force will be very effective, along with hopefully our 2 attendance specialists that we're hoping to recruit, so that, as Brian indicated earlier, they can monitor and help to provide interventions, attendance contracts with our students, even go to homes, visit students to see why they aren't going to school and get them back in school. And in addition, also putting together some attendance incentive programs for each of the students.
Thank you. Goal 4, secure and strengthen homeschool community connections and communications. We had 3 areas, 3 objectives that we focused on this past year. We've done some really remarkable things. I think it's near and dear to my heart with the parent involvement piece for the district. We are looking at, of course, we all know that we are a one-to-one district with our Chromebooks. Well over 10,000 Chromebooks have been issued to our students, which they use daily, not only for instruction but communication, as well as our teachers being able to communicate with the students as well. The social media aspect, many of our teachers and our administrators and our cabinet members are very well versed in Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Right, Candace? Yes. And so we continue to promote that through our efforts and working with our parent groups. Wi-Fi connections, the technology department has piloted or will be purchasing or has purchased some new equipment to work with our city of Paris to be able to expand network offerings in the community, as well as expanding Wi-Fi connections on campus in those high-density areas such as the football fields and certain areas of campus where students hang out to be able to communicate. Also about for increasing parent communication and participation, much of what we've done, we continue to do as far as promoting our ESL classes, our adult ed, our computer literacy, our health and well-being classes. We also offered PK this year again. We're going to be offering citizenship classes for the first time in collaboration with MSJC next year. We'll be expanding our ESL offerings at all of our campus as well. We're very excited, but I think the biggest one that we're going to be rolling out is our Parent Link, which is an app, and I'm probably not the best one to talk about the technology aspects of it, but I know that it's going to be great for our parents because they will be able to access, and right now I believe it is being piloted and will be rolled out in the fall. It's being piloted. There you go. So Joe, correct me if I get my the tools wrong. That parents will be able to have access to attendance, truancies. They'll be able to look at lunch menus, grades, events at the schools. So you do not want to check this app while you're at a stoplight, but when you are pulled over and safe, Marcy, you can check this app, and you'll be able to take a look at where your child's what they're doing as far as grades and attendance. That is very exciting. I'm looking forward to that. Also, this year we did put in the budget to hire 4 ERMS therapists, and Lynn's going to come back and share a little bit more about their services and supports for students as well as parents. They have been very busy throughout the district as well. The last one, increasing business and community networking. We are also very excited to going to be rebranding our district webpage. I saw it, and it is awesome. Very user-friendly. I can't wait till that gets out there for our parents and that is also next week, so we are looking forward to sharing that with our community as well as our parents. So it is a very, very nice. I'm not sure who I can give kudos to, but it does look nice. It is awesome. It is very user friendly, and I can't wait to be able to take one of those tabs to create a CTE on that web page. So I'm working with technology on that one. We are also going to be scheduling or creating our business advisory committee, and as you'll know at the next board meeting, I'll be sharing our grant that we were successfully awarded for Paloma Valley High School. Part of our CTE is our commitment to our business community, and so we will be really broadening that and strengthening that on behalf of the district as well. We have currently paid internships through our after-school assets grant through Think Together. We've been able to work with Bank of America and Edison to be able to offer our students paid internships, so we're very excited about that. For next steps, I probably said some of this just now. As far as our outcomes, just really what we would like to do is just the expansion of our citizenship. That was a big request from our community and from our families to be able to offer that, and just expanding our ESL. We work with Dr. Newman in identifying students that are considered foster or homeless. We supply them every year with backpacks and other school supplies throughout the year, and we also leave some of those materials and supplies at the schools as well. We will continue to expand our offerings, working with collaboratively with MSJC, so we're very excited, and not only working with our summer bridges, as Brian was talking about, but also with our citizenship and ESL classes, which Candace will appreciate that won't cost us any money. It's through their grant program, but we just need to supply the facilities. So we're very, very excited about that. Lynn's going to just talk a little bit about the Community Advisory Committee through SELPA, as well as the supports and services for our ERMS counselors. And also turn it over to Lynn to share on that one.
So with our Community Advisory Committee that our SELPA has, it gives all of our parents an opportunity to go find out different information. They can participate in trainings. It's also open to any educational staff, and any consultant can sit in. We really like the trainings that are offered year-round through SELPA, and it helps parents to understand more about the IEP process, about different laws that impact their students with disabilities. In addition, they also help with linking parents to community resources. Now, one of the things that I'm really excited about is one of the goals for our district for the 2015-16 school year. We plan to establish a special education parent advisory committee at each of our comprehensive campuses, and that falls under the Community Advisory Committee that the districts have. And so we will be working hard to establish that, and then to also increase our parents' representation at the SELPA level. There are 3 openings that we can fill, and we're hoping to have all 3 filled this coming school year. We did not have all 3 filled for the previous school year. Now, in regards to our ERMS therapists, they have really worked so hard this year with helping our students that have mental health issues, students that needed immediate interventions. It's been great having them at our comprehensive campuses because when there's a crisis, they're able to deal with it right away, and there's no wait time like we used to have when we previously had to do referrals to county mental health. Our ERMS therapists have been able to serve students in individual groups, and in group sessions, and they've also worked with families and brought the student and families together to discuss certain crises that they were going to. Some of the topics for the trainings that they've had the opportunity to work with students on: depression. You'd be really surprised how many of our students really do face depression, anxiety, self-harm, and which impacts their attendance at school. So with our ERMS therapists working with our students, this is another way that we're hoping to increase attendance. They also have helped our students with linking to Victor Community Services, and Victor has then come onto our school campuses, and they've also provided some group sessions on anger management, again, depression, and then life skills groups. We've also had the opportunity to work with another community resource, Alliance Mental Health, and they've worked with our students on stress in your mood, so they can start identifying when they're having stressors in their lives and give them strategies to implement. Our ERMS therapists have also participated in training so that they can stay on top of their game. They've gone through the secondary transition training so that they can assist our staff at our comprehensive campuses in planning for our students. They've participated in Educational Summit, PBIS training, and also Crisis Prevention Intervention Trainer of Trainers. And this is a nonviolent intervention training program that our staff can have access to. And then also self-regulation of social-emotional behaviors, teaching the students, again, as I mentioned earlier, about learning how to regulate their emotions. Thank you.
I think I get the next slide. Oh, no.
You want me to do this before budget?
We can, okay.
I'll go ahead and do this.
Okay.
I think all of you can hear from everyone's presentation that every single part, it's not just about students. It's about staff, classified and certificated. It's about parents, families, community members. It is an entire village, if you want to say, to help our students do the best that they possibly can do. There's a lot of endeavors that have been put in place, and we need to continue with much rigor to ensure that our students still are afforded the best of the best. The involvement process in developing the LCAP and the annual update is really it's serious business, because that's why it's called the Local Control and Accountability Plan. It brought local participation, so everyone is a stakeholder: students, parents, community members, all that I have mentioned, and all staff. So on this, I just want to share with you, last year when we started with the LCAP, we held forums that included business partners, community, parents, students, staff, union bargaining, or PSEA and CSEA were very active in as well. This year, we changed it just a little bit. Instead of pulling parents to the Student Services Center, because that's hard. They really had asked, can we do this at our local schools where our students, where our children go to school? So we started, just so you know, there's a couple pieces in this involvement process, also known as stakeholder engagement. At district leadership and management meetings, we would talk about, not just about LCAP and annual update, but about what are the needs of our students, what are the needs of our staff, what are the needs of the families and the parents. And so that was always on the agenda, whether it be looking at data or just doing roundtable discussions, what's happening at your site, what are the progressive steps we need to make and take. It was planning. School site advisory. So we took everything so parents could be a little more connected to the school site. And not that they aren't connected when they come to student services, but it's really nice to be able at the school sites, at their school site councils, their ELACs, et cetera, where parents can hear and look at the budgets. Everything is transparent. where they're looking at specific information in regards to that school. And so that became in your, on page 3, behind the annual update tab, you can see the dates of how school site advisories, the dates they were held, which was plentiful. Really appreciate the sites taking an active interest. Board meeting updates, we do that, try to keep you alert and aware of what's happening in regards to the LCAP and the annual update. District advisories such as the DLAC, District English Learner Parent Advisory Council. You heard Mrs. Braxton talk about starting a special ed, they call it CPAC, Special Ed Parent Advisory Council. Those things are really important. Public forums, I just have to give kudos to Charles Tippie, who picked up the English Learner. He really has been focusing in and building kind of what I call a small learning community with in regards to English learners. And he would always talk about what is happening in regards to LCAP, and that will continue to be on the agendas with those as well. And the same with students with disabilities. I think Mr. Morris and Ms. Braxton also talked about the CAC. It's the Council, Community Action Advisory Council. And also what I have noticed is they talk a lot during IEPs. That's the Individual Educational Plan for students with disabilities. And that continuing, assessing the needs of students even with disabilities, identifying what needs to happen with that, looking for trends. Public hearing, that's tonight. That's what we're doing tonight. And then student focus groups, that's the one area I put it down on the bottom, only because we really need to take more in-depth steps, if you want to say it that way, to really pull out our student groups, whether it be through ASB, different clubs, whatever. We can do surveys and whatever, but really talking about, hey, do you know what the 4 goals of the district are? You know, they're all for you in closing that achievement gap and doing a better job. So that is one area that I don't want to say it wasn't fully implemented we had to assess it. Okay, impact on LCAP. Oh, this piece didn't come up, did it? Oh, it did. There it is. This is a recap. In your spare time, and when you want to read a little story, on page 3, I think it's 3, 4, and 5, it talks about how stakeholder engagement, the impact that having stakeholders has had on the LCAP. It's not about just this team here. As you heard through the presentations, I think one of the greatest things that LCAP has done is it has integrated the departments throughout the district. That's number one, where we all have to work collaboratively. And do we have differences at times? Yes, we do. But we're all focused on that primary goal of growing and helping students be successful. That's been, we used to have, I think we still do, have what we call the CAST, and that was Common Core, AVID, SBAC, and technology. And if I could make any recommendation that unity of that group, if it still restored itself and continued, because it brings all departments, whether you're in business services, human resources, out at the school sites or whatever, it brings it together for a very unified focus. As you heard tonight, we talked about, parents are now becoming much more educated. School sites have done a phenomenal job in educating parents in the child's journey. Parents are now talking about, what is an A through G? What does it mean? Understanding what a student's transcript looks like. They've also asked for more career technical education offerings. That's huge. So that's the impact there. Proactive interventions and supports. You heard the team talk about PBIS. PBIS is not a script. PBIS is a process and a culture for academic and, if you want to say, behavioral. It's tiered interventions and support. And Dr. Newman has done a great job in getting that promoted and off and running. Professional development, that is not just for teachers. It is for everyone in this room and out at the school sites. Campus supervisors, nutrition servers, you name it. Superintendents, professional development is for every single person. And I know Grant and numerous others are planning for a huge professional development in August and then again in January. And it's not just having isolated professional developments. It's training and empowering our staff to become better at what they're doing, to become more confident, and to be able to come back and share with their departments, grade levels, teams, etc. So when they go to professional development, it's not just, aha, I got a white binder and it goes on my shelf. It is, you need to bring back that magic and share it with all. PLCs, there's a huge focus on re-energizing our professional learning communities. You hear and you'll see there's lots of data. It's very important that we stay as focused as we possibly can on what are the needs of this district, not just pulling things out of the sky, but really having a justification of why we're doing the actions and the supports that we are doing. Family support remains first and foremost. Our families need all the support, whether it be simple communication, returning a phone call, answering an email, reaching out and helping to understand our families and know our students. That is first and foremost. And then also parent community outreach. We will continue in this plan, we will continue with our parent liaisons. We have a district parent liaison, and then we have one at Paris High and also at my mind just Pinnacotti. Thank you. How could I forget Grace? So that community outreach is a priority as well. And now here comes Mrs. Martin. Oh, you're behind me.
I'm right
Okay.
behind you.
Okay. Go for it.
Because I think that might lead into the next segment. It's not on here, but it is in your handout, which would just basically be the summary of our LCAP expenditures. So for ease of understanding and being a user-friendly document, we basically just identified those areas that we have assigned budget allocations. So we have our objectives that they were assigned to. The middle column is the budget expenditures, which is what we said we were going to budget in these areas. The last column is what we actually spent. So I'm not going to bore you and go through each line item unless you really, really, really want me to. I'll take that as a no, move on, okay. So it goes on to the next page, but what I'd like to just kind of point out is all the different multiple funding sources in order to meet the goals and objectives for the LCAP. We not only use LCFF money, but we also use many of our state and federal program dollars to achieve the same results. So that just is a breakdown of the monies that were allocated for LCFF or LCAP. Those are what we actually had spent. Any questions? Okay. Well, I think that can. Oh wait, Marcy.
Say one thing.
Okay.
Okay. So the big question is, who didn't make it to the microphone? Carrie, come forward. And I don't mean to embarrass you, but I want you to know, in every organization, there are those people who work 24/7, like all of us here, who answer the call of an assistant soup, whether it be Sunday morning, whether it be at graduation from college or whatever, but pulling data. We could not do what we're doing without the efforts of he and everyone else behind me, and I just want you to know that I say carry your excuse from speaking in the microphone tonight, unless you have a few words to say.
Thank you much.
So
Didn't he just graduate?
He did. University of Phoenix on Saturday.
Yeah.
Tell him what your major is. Tell him what your major is.
I got my Bachelor of Science in Information Technology with a focus on information management.
And so what are you going to do next?
And next I'm going to start researching some master's programs, maybe out at UCR or some other places closer. I just need somewhere closer to here. So some UC, but I'm ready to shop around, and it's going to be in more data visualization and whatnot.
Thank you, Carrie. Yeah. Very proud of you. Well, while we're talking about graduations, you want to share? Never mind.
I was going to do it in mine. One other graduate. You're out. Wait, is he still here? Oh. Hector graduates on Wednesday. Except I guess I'm not as good of a boss. I don't remember what school he's going to.
So as you can see, learning continues for everyone in this field. So with that, this is our annual update of our LCAP, and we are here before you to answer any questions you may have or hear any comments.
Well, remember, board, again, this will come back for your final approval on the 17th, but this is an opportunity for us to present. For you in the community, we do need to hold a public hearing.
We do.
And then if you have questions tonight, great. If not, you can ask them on the 17th or send them to Marcy between now and then, and she'll be happy to find the right person to answer if she's not the one.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate our outgoing assistant superintendent. But that was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I mean, a lot of detail, but it's all there, and I feel great to be part of this organization because I think we're heading in the right direction. So thank each and every one for your efforts.
Tremendous team. So. You're welcome. Okay. No questions on data? I mean, Dr. Rao, I mean, you always ask us something. Are you going to look at it?
He's going to look at it.
Okay. Is okay? Okay. Hope it, it was hard to pull. It wasn't hard to pull the information, but it was very, it took a lot of effort for this team to pull it together so that it told a story. Because that's really what the LCAP is. It's a story plus where we're headed. So the script is there, ready to grow and go forth with. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Okay, I'd open up the floor to anybody who would like to speak on the LCAP plan. We're opening at 6:33. Anybody? Any takers at all? We do have one. Please come on down.
You have to turn the mic on, and then you have to tell us who you are.
Oh, sorry. I feel like I'm in trial or something. My name's Lisa Towery. I'm the labor rep for the California School Employees Association. When I was looking at the plan and the budget, oh, Candace isn't here. Where is she? Oh, there you go. Doesn't the LCAP and the adopted budget have to match? Yes. Okay, so then I'm not noticing in the LCAP the employee, the employee increases and so on and so forth. So I was wondering, where would that be included?
Next year? Yeah.
Sorry.
Caught her with food in her mouth.
Oh, sorry.
Supplemental concentration.
I'm sorry.
That was lady. That was a conversation I think that I had with Chris Rabing just a little bit ago, just to make sure that we address it accordingly and correctly. So that will be in our 15-16 LCAP going forward for next year, since it has not been finalized.
Is that included in the
The annual update really just reflects 14-15, our current year. So as we're moving forward with our
I did notice an increase in money that's for next year, 15-16 of
Right.
$863,000. Is that included in that number, or you're going to have to readjust that?
Well, when we do the LCAP, that's where it will be explained as far as the where those increases are going to be reflected.
The money lady.
That's okay. So a couple of things. The LCAP primarily no, stay right,
Oh,
right
okay.
here. Primarily addresses the supplemental and the concentration dollars. What's outside of what do they call those? Not priority services. Your standard.
The basic
The
services?
basic services, basic services. And so since the compensation that you specifically asked about, Lisa, is one funded out of the base grant and two is a basic service. And we have yet another presentation, which is the budget presentation, and you're going actually to see those costs very clearly in the budget presentation.
But isn't it supposed to be stated as one of the goals and part of the LCAPs? The template's new. So, and they're asking specific information now, like where are you spending the money, how are you spending the money. And I've seen some LCAPs, honestly, 3 across the state only because people are starting to do, where it actually states something like in order to retain quality professionals, because the whole point is you want to retain your employees so that you can implement the plan. And then the LCAP actually states that in one of their goals. So I didn't know if are you doing a supplemental LCAP? I heard you say 15, 16. So this is the annual summary. So you have another LCAP coming? Because I see the 15, 16.
Well, the LCAP that we currently wrote is for 14-15. So the decisions and the voting of all of the extra money that's coming out of the LCFF has not been addressed in the current LCAP. These are conversations and goals that we set early last year. So the annual update reflects those goals and objectives. But with the onset of the negotiations and the approvals, in the 15-16 LCAP, we will be revising that document to reflect any monies that are going to be used at a supplemental concentration monies, any of those raises and increases that are coming out of that pot of money will be addressed in the 15-16.
And Lisa, it will identify. It doesn't just say, "Oh, everyone received a raise." It will tell you, extra minutes, more time for students. So then it will be reflected under one of those 4 goals, or maybe all of those goals.
But I do want to, and Candace just brought it up because I want to clarify, when we're working with the LCAP and addressing the supplemental concentration money, if the monies weren't appropriated for the raises and so forth, or the increases weren't part of that, then it typically wouldn't be in there as part of that budget allocation for supplemental concentration money.
So your LCAP is just reflected of just your supplemental concentration, but is
Yes.
it supposed to be in everything?
That's been really kind of left up to the districts to determine how they want to present the information and how they want to design
how
the
they
LCAP.
want to design it.
Yeah, the budget and the LCAP really are married. They go hand in hand. The LCAP document, I mean, it's already very long, right? and I'll go through it line by line, like you suggested.
Oh, goody.
But it's not going to tie penny to penny to everything in the budget. Art Fritz, his routine repair and maintenance budget, every little thing that he puts in that budget is not going to be reflected in the LCAP. It's going to be the goals that are funded out of supplemental and concentration.
But I want to address, Lisa, I know what you're saying, because some districts include facilities, budget, transportation budgets, et cetera, all inclusive. We have had the opportunity to choose to do that or not do that. It's done. I mean, Candace does define the different budgets there. It's very transparent. And then, so it's not all in one packet. Otherwise, you'd be sitting about 360 pages, to be quite honest. Yeah.
I was just wondering because our government relations.
Get in the microphone.
We have a government relations up in Sacramento, basically our lobbyists, who work up there, and I've been talking to them back and forth, because now that my districts are coming up with LCAPs, some are taking the position that we can't use supplemental concentration for salaries, and so that's why I'm questioning it, because that is not true. And so I just wanted to know what this district was planning to do.
Well, we're using the base to fund the raises.
Okay.
But for the teachers to work the extra time, that's where the supplemental and concentration money is. We absolutely disagree with your lobbyists that supplemental and concentration money can be used for raises for employees unless they're providing additional services than they're already providing to our students. That's been our
That
direction.
seems to be like a controversy, but no, I get what you're saying because I know what school services.
But we're going to
say,
have to
and
be able to prove someday when the LCAP police
Sure.
come that we're going to be able to track supplemental and concentration money down to what did it do to help those three groups of students. Just giving the superintendent a 10% raise, I mean, I'd have to tell you there's no research that would support that would increase those student
It's
achievement.
true. You have to tie it to a measurable outcome.
A metric. There has to be a defined
And I
metric.
think that's where districts are struggling. But I just spoke to GR today, and they said that the state superintendent was going to send out something. So we'll see, because everyone's confused about it. I mean, it's not everyone is.
It's
Even
in
CSCA,
process,
yeah,
Lisa.
everything.
Yeah.
It's definitely okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you. Anybody else wanting to speak on this? No? Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. We're closing that at 6:41. Okay. We'll press on. Public hearing regarding adoption of the 2015-16 district budget.
Oh my God. Wait, let me see. Make sure he doesn't have my notes behind it. No. You don't be around.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing at 6:40. Wait for it. 6:42. There we go. Okay.
Okay, Sarah, So we'll try and go really, really quickly. I think I said that last time, so I'm probably not very credible at this point. But yeah, I know. I've heard that before. So we're going to go briefly through the budget. There's some big news. It's not news anymore to any of you, but 15-16 provides the highest increase in education funding. May Revise provides an additional $3.1 billion for education funding. Joe can help you. $3.1 billion for education funding in 14-15. I'll put it on presentation mode. You want to help, Steve? It's a PDF, yeah. So I think if you can find her. I'm going to keep going, if is that all right, since you have it in front of you? Okay. The governor proposes adding $2.1 billion to the $4 billion that was already proposed in the January version of his budget, for a total of $6.1 billion. The gap closure funding rate goes from 32.19% next year all the way up to 53.08%. I'm going to skip to the next page. So here's some, because I'm trying to go quickly, here's some quick issues of note. Some things that were not addressed in the May Revise is CalSTRS and CalPERS funding increases. Chris is going to talk about that in just a little bit. One of the biggest questions when any of us, but especially somebody like me and somebody like Chris, when we see funding increases this substantial, we want to know, is that sustainable? Is this the real deal? As you know, we've entered into tentative agreements, and they've now been ratified with all of our bargaining units. So the question is the funding increase proposed by the governor affordable by the state? And the short answer to that is yes, because of property tax growth, it's sufficient to cover the proposed increases. So if we look at Proposition 98 funding, look at that big dip that we saw in the recession. And so the yellow and the orange bars there, the yellow bar is the Proposition 98 money that the governor proposed in his January budget. And so you can see from 13-14 all the way through 15-16, there has always been more money in May than there has been in January. So the trend is the continued upward funding of Prop 98. We've generally said, at least with this governor, the January governor's budget is the floor. It'll only get better in May, and usually the state budget is very similar to the May Revise. General fund budget summary. This is the state's general fund. I should correct myself. one of the issues of note is the state is actually spending less in 15-16 in Prop 98 than it is in 14-15. And so the claims that Prop 98 is responsible for other programs not receiving, money is just simply not true. It's because of the maintenance factor of Prop 98. So that's just, some information for you. However, state revenues and Prop 98, the funding is going to slow. Yes, we had a current year surge in state revenues, but again, this is primarily because of the repayment of the maintenance factor with Proposition 98. So really the conclusion to draw from that is Prop 98 funding will slow considerably once the maintenance factor has been fully repaid, and we should be looking for growth in the area of 2 to 4% each year. So not like the 14 and so growth that we've been seeing, though it is great. This is just to show you in a different way the difference in the January governor's budget versus the May governor's budget, both in the funding percentage for GAP as well as the Prop 98 minimum guarantee, the COLA. The COLA did decrease, but the overall funding is still greater. And then the one-time discretionary funds, there was actually more money provided between January and May in 14-15, the current year, but those were provided in one-time funds. So again, the January budget proposed an additional $4 billion. The new funding is estimated to close the gap in 14-15 levels and LCFF full implementation again by that 53.08% in 15-16. And then when you and the gap funding actually increases slightly in 14-15, but when you combine 13-14 and 14-15, the implementation progress that would close that entire gap. Remember when this proposal was first adopted 2 years ago, or not quite 2 years ago now, they said 8 years to full implementation. With the proposal for 15-16, we're now 70% almost whole. So just real quick, here's the progress towards LCFF implementation, because if you remember, LCFF funding is new. It works a little bit like revenue limits in that, the state used to say, we're going to fund you up here, but when we can't, we're going to apply a deficit factor so your funding's here. LCFF works pretty similarly. Here's your target up here, but we can't fund all of that, so we're only going to fund a certain percentage of last year and what we should be paying you. So you can see that we're closer to LCFF implementation than we thought in this current year. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chris Ray. We're really rushing through. Maybe you're a better partner for me than Hector. So Chris is going to tell you what this means to our district budget.
Thank you again. Thank you for letting me present the budget to you. So as a district, we have to identify what that gap funding percentage is we're using for ongoing years. For the first couple years, we've seen a trend where we are meeting the closer to the Department of Defense's, or I'm sorry, the Department of Finance's. Well, that's true. The Department of Finance's percentages, we're getting closer to them than we have in school services. So we made a determination that we would, by looking at the Department of Finance and school services percentages in the out years, we're looking at those two values and we're taking the average of the two of them as we're going out to get a more close evaluation of where we will see our gap funding in the future. So as of right now, what you see in this slide is the again, as Candace mentioned, we have a target. That's where we would like to be with gap funding. We have the percentage of where our floor is, or what our base amount is, and where they want us to be, and it's the percentage of the gap that we're having. So at this point, you're going to notice that current year we're at the almost 30% of the gap. Next year we are at 53% of the gap. And as we continue to move outward, we're looking at 25% and 27%. What you should also notice is that as we continue to increase and get closer to the ceiling or the fully funded amounts, the the amount in which we're going to receive, even though percentage is going to get higher, the amount that we're going to receive is going to start dropping. So right now, we're sitting at 70% of the original gap within the 8 years, right? So 70% of that next year, we're only looking at 30% of the remaining. So as that number continues to come, we're not going to be getting as much. So you'll notice that in the gap funding dollar amount, even though it's at 25%, it's definitely not half of what we received or we're going to receive in the 15-16 school year. So I just wanted to make a note of that. So the gap funding breakdown, this identifies what the increase is and where that money comes when we're looking at the increase to the gap funding. So we get a dollar amount on the base grant, we get supplemental concentration, and we also identify where the CTE dollar amounts are. The discretionary funds in the May revise, it talked about the increase of the Prop 98 that Candace talked about, where we went from the $1.1 billion to a $3.5 billion, which is essentially the $601 per ADA we're receiving. And then again, that's a one-time money. That's a large amount that we're receiving for next year that we haven't identified all of the expenditures of. So what you're going to see in our following multi-year is that amount is going to continue on as our ending fund balance until we identify as a district what the priorities are for that. The funded CalPERS and CalSTRS amounts, again, there has been an increase to what the district is paying, so that's an increase to the expense for the district. And on the next slide, we're identifying as the rates for CalSTRS increase, so does the amount that the district is paying over what we paid in the prior year. In that 4-year span, we're going to be increasing $2.6 million of what we're paying towards CalSTRS. And in the 4 years of increase for CalPERS, we're paying almost $800,000. So as was talked about a little bit ago, we do have tentative agreements with the PSEA and CSEA bargaining units within the budget. For the county, we did try and incorporate those expenses in the hopes that that will be approved by the board. And I have an example of what those expenses are as of right now. In the current year, we have a 2% ongoing and the 3% off schedule, and then again, you have the 6.5% on schedule, and then that supplemental amount that was discussed earlier, the 6.41%. So those are all the expenses specific to what those agreements would cost by bargaining unit and by the percentage as a fiscal year. So again, there was the additional budget constraints that we talked about in the last presentation in the second interim. We talked about in the 15-16 school year, CSEAs has some expenses that are ongoing that cost us as fixed costs and that we do need to take into consideration as preparing a budget. So every year we are taking into consideration step increases, health and welfare increases, and those PERS and STRS increases in all of our bargaining units to make sure that we know what comes out of the base grant, what is left over as we're continuing to create our budget. So one of the other pieces with regard to where we're funded has to do with where our enrollment is. As of right now, what you should have observed from this graph is that starting in the 2011-12 school year, we started declining in enrollment. As right now, we are projecting to continue to increase up into the 15-16 school year with our district enrollment, which in turn does impact where our funding is. So the increased ADA also provides an increase in funding. So what I have for you is the unrestricted general fund summary as it goes out for the current year as it closes up, and then the 3 ongoing years. What you're going to notice is that in current year we have a slight deficit spending as we continue to spend down things that are one time, like the Common Core monies, and then we start looking at next year and ongoing where we are starting to create a reserve, but again, that reserve from next year is coming from the large amount of one-time money, the $601 per ADA. And then as we ongo, you're going to notice that we're keeping the 3% normal reserve, and the other reserve amounts are somewhere around 3% as well. You have a detailed summary that is not part of the presentation, but it was given to you. That was part of the board agenda item, and it identifies specifically what is left over from the LCFF supplemental concentration, what's left over in the one-time monies, so that we can sort of summarize where that's the other reserves are. Yes, sir.
Yeah, is there a projection of how we're gonna move as far away as we can from the 3% reserve? Well, I mean, at one time we were around.
We're still around 6%.
You're still okay.
Yeah. There was nothing I didn't actually mention it. It was in the presentation. Nothing of note in the May revise from the governor in terms of the repealing the reserve cap language that goes along with the whole rainy day fund.
Mm-hmm.
So, as it stands currently, we could have that reserve cap. The maintenance factor is not fully repaid, so it doesn't go into effect yet. And so that is something we may need to deal with. But the short answer to your question is we still are right around 6%.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Which is a good place to be.
Yes. So then what we're also presenting is what next year's budget looks like as it relates to expenditures in both the unrestricted and restricted fields. We have about 80% of the unrestricted dollars are being spent on the certificated classified and benefits, where the other 20% is being spent on the books and supplies and the other materials. If you're looking at the restricted side of that, obviously you're going to see more of the supplies and things that are being spent, and less of that is being spent on specific bodies. So what I have for you is just a summary of what we're looking for in all of the different funds. We're working through the general unrestricted, the general restricted. We have a charter, which I'll be presenting for you, hopefully a shorter presentation than the one I'm providing now for the charter funds. We do have an adult ed. The cafeteria fund is presented to you, as well as the other facility plans and planning funds. And this is just a very brief explanation of where the beginning balance is, what the revenues are, what the expenditures are, and what those ending balances would look like. So the next steps is that we're looking to continue with this public hearing and receive any input from both the district or any community members. A final budget will be presented to the board for approval on June 17th. The district adopted budget, along with the district LCAP, will go to the county for final approvals, and then following the state budget adoption, then we'll come back with any necessary revisions in a future meeting. Is there any follow-up questions you might have for me? Thank you, guys. You have a wonderful day.
Whatever's left.
Okay, and now we've already opened the public hearing, so we don't have to open for comments?
Well, yes, you have to ask if there's anybody.
I know. Okay, does anybody have any comments, questions on the budget, district budget? Nothing this time? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to, say just a couple things. First of all, I want to. This was the longest recession since the Great Depression. I attended a conference a couple years ago, and the retired superintendent in this district, who's a consultant for a couple other companies, came up to me and put his arm around me and said, if any old superintendent, he used more colorful language, but he said, if any old superintendent ever puts their arm around you and says they know what it was like to go through tough times, He said they wouldn't be telling you the truth unless they were superintendent during the Great Recession. During the Great Depression. And I really want to thank our employees we really did not make any cuts to the kids during the recession, but our employees did sacrifice, and I just want to publicly say thank you to the teachers and the classified employees and the management employees who made decisions which I felt were best for students, but they were tough on families. And now, to be coming out on the other end, you need to know that, like Lisa said earlier to me privately, other districts are wondering how the heck we did it. Well, obviously, the leadership and the vision of the board that we would stay at 3% and try to struggle through the recession but not make the cuts to the kids in the classrooms. We did increase busing distances, so there was some hardship on our families and our students. But clearly, Candace and her team and our employees really deserve the credit, because now we're on the other end, and we're very proud to be in a position where we are having the best raises. We are going to offer our students even more opportunities through a 7-period day. It's historic for students to get a 7-period day. It's what it will do for them and our employees. I just can't wait to see the future roll out. And I commend everybody for the sacrifice they made, and now we're on the other end, at least for a while. And I commend everybody for pitching in to make sure that we move forward on behalf of children. Thank you very much.
Lisa Towery, labor rep for CSEA. Thank you for valuing your employees. You are the highest, I think, package that we've had in the county. And yes, you're the talk of the town, believe me. Because I go to other districts and we report out. We had staff meeting last week. But it's all about valuing your employees, and it's really important. And we had some really great conversation with both Steve and Tanya, and so we're very appreciative of that. We both listened to each other, and it was a really good conversation. It really was. But thank you, really, for all my members and setting the bar so I can go to other tables and make it tough.
Thank you, Lisa. I think it's critical to point out that during the recession, the people to my right chose not to lay off classified employees and teachers, and that was done virtually everywhere else. And it was advised by our attorneys to do it as a bargaining ploy, and we chose not to do that. And again, I think it gets back to you value your people, and we certainly do.
Okay, we're going to close the public hearing at 7:03. Okay, invitation to address the board on closed session items only. Do we have any takers? None? Okay. Okay, motion to adjourn to closed session.